There are people who move through life almost untouched, as if reality slides over them like light rain. And there are people who feel everything. You may belong to the second kind, the kind who senses atmosphere before words, emotion before logic, meaning before explanation. You walk into a room and your body already knows what has not been spoken. You hear someone talk and something in you registers truth or tension beneath their tone. You are never asleep to the invisible layers of reality. And because of that, you were never fully protected from them either. From the outside, sensitivity looks like fragility. From the inside, it feels like exposure, like living without emotional skin. Every sound lands louder than it should. Every disappointment feels heavier than others seem to experience it. Every betrayal echoes much longer inside you than it appears to for anyone else. You were not born to suffer more. You were born to perceive more. But no one placed tools in your hands for what to do with everything you perceive. So you learned something else. You learned how to quiet yourself, how to blunt sharp edges, how to dim your intensity just enough to survive in a world that does not pause for depth. You found ways to lower the internal volume. Some were subtle, some were chemical. Some hid behind routines and explanations that made perfect sense on the surface. But all of them were doing the same thing. They were trying to create silence inside a life that never truly felt quiet. This is where addiction enters the story. Not as a monster. Not as a moral failure. Not as a weakness. Addiction appears where sensitivity has nowhere to go. It is not born from excess pleasure but from excess feeling. It begins as a refuge, a space where the nervous system can finally exhale, a temporary sanctuary where awareness turns blurry enough to be bearable. You did not turn to escape because you were broken. You turned to escape because you were overwhelmed. If you have ever felt that strange relief in disappearing into something, anything, just long enough to stop feeling so much, it is not an accident. It is the language of a nervous system that has been living in a storm for too long. And what if the thing you tried to silence was not your flaw, but your untrained gift? What if your sensitivity was never the enemy? What if it has been speaking this entire time without anyone around you who knew how to understand it? You were never too sensitive. You were wired differently. Some people experience life like a flat road. Others walk it like a steep mountain trail. Every emotion rises and falls with sharper angles. Every experience carries more weight, more color, more echo. The body of a spiritually sensitive person is not just a container, it is an antenna. Your nervous system is not only reacting to obvious danger, it is reading subtle shifts in tone, mood, undercurrents, and unspoken tensions that most people never consciously register. While others filter out most of reality, you absorb it raw. This is not romantic language. This is how your system actually works. Your nervous system stays alert not simply because you are anxious, but because your perception is open wide. And when perception never shuts off, the body gets tired before the mind understands why. You may feel fatigue even on days when nothing physical has been done. You may crave isolation without a clear reason. You may feel full after being around people in the same way others feel full after a heavy meal. This is the weight of awareness. When awareness remains untrained, it becomes overload. When overload lasts long enough, it becomes exhaustion. Exhaustion does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it disguises itself as boredom, restlessness, irritability, quiet dissatisfaction. But beneath those masks, your body is repeating the same sentence. This is too much, and no one has shown me how to hold it. So you looked for a downshift, something to soften the intensity, something that could lower the inner volume. When you found it, your nervous system finally tasted what it had been craving. Not excitement, not stimulation, but temporary absence. The brief luxury of not being so aware. The relief of not perceiving so deeply for a while. This is why addiction feels seductive to sensitive people. It promises rest. It imitates calm. It convinces the body that peace has arrived when in truth awareness has just been switched off. It is a neurological illusion, a softness that does not transform anything, only sedates it. The tragedy is not that you needed relief. The tragedy is that no one ever taught you another way to regulate your inner world. You were given a powerful nervous system with no instruction manual, You were handed depth without tools, and without tools, even a gift can grind you down. So a different question rises. If addiction is not the disease but the medicine you invented for a system in distress, then what have you actually been trying to treat inside yourself? Some people are taught to name what they feel. Others are taught to bury it. You learned something in between. You learned how to endure it. You learned how to survive emotional weather without ever studying its patterns. So every feeling arrived like a storm instead of a message. You were never lacking control. You were lacking translation. Your emotions were not too strong. They were too undefined. When feelings do not have language, they turn into pressure. When pressure does not find release, it turns into overload. And overload eventually demands an exit. This is what makes emotionally sensitive people so vulnerable to escape behaviors. Not because they crave pleasure more than others, but because they live inside intensity with no clear way to process it. Many people discharge emotion through simple conversation, movement, or the natural fading of time. You feel everything long after the moment has passed. Your body remembers what your mind tries to outgrow. Emotion without fluency becomes weight, and weight, when carried too long, will look for any door. If no healthy door is visible, the mind will create one. That door may be a substance, it may be a routine, it may be a relationship, it may be any pattern that offers what your nervous system cannot yet generate on its own. Emotional temperature control. The danger is not in longing for comfort. The danger is in confusing anesthesia with healing. When inner language is missing, silence feels like safety. When feelings have no names, numbness feels like organization. Slowly, inner chaos trains you to crave absence instead of resolution. You stop seeking joy, you start seeking quiet. And the quiet you find is artificial and temporary, which pulls you back again and again, hoping that this time it will last. This is how the cycle deepens. Not through greed, but through exhaustion. Not through desire, but through the quiet heartbreak of being emotionally illiterate in a world that demands emotional fluency. If you have ever wondered why you cannot explain what you feel, why words vanish when emotion rises, this is not emptiness. It is depth without translation. It is a language you were never taught to speak. Here is where something can shift. If emotion can be learned, named, and metabolized, then addiction loses the role it has played. The escape becomes unnecessary once expression becomes possible. The nervous system does not want numbness at its core. It wants resolution. It wants coherence. It wants to understand itself. Once you begin to sense this, another unsettling truth surfaces. If escape is not pleasure but imitation, if it only resembles something real that has been missing all along, then what is addiction truly trying to imitate? Addiction does not arise only from chaos. It also imitates something sacred. Many addictive rituals mirror the inner states people seek through prayer, silence, breath, or mindful stillness. Release from pressure. Separation from identity. Momentary relief from time and thought. You are not addicted to the substance itself. You are attached to the stillness it pretends to give you. For a brief moment, the mind loosens its grip. The edges blur. The volume drops. The constant inner commentary pauses. In that pause, something inside you recognizes a familiar taste. It feels close to peace. But that peace is artificial. It is not grown. It is triggered. It is not integrated. It is forced. And anything forced cannot sustain you. It can only visit you, demanding that you return to it, because nothing lasting is built while you are there. For spiritually sensitive people, this imitation is especially powerful. You are already wired to recognize transcendence. You know the texture of depth. When something temporarily dissolves your edges, it feels like the real thing. It feels like a doorway back to yourself. But what actually happens is not awakening. It is evaporation. You do not become more present. You become less. You do not deepen awareness, you dull it. You do not enter the body, you leave it. The body notices the difference even when the mind does not. The relief wears off. The hangover is not only chemical, it is spiritual fatigue. It is the quiet grief of realizing that what looked like peace was only a short break from pain. Over time, the system demands repetition. not because it wants the object, but because it craves the state the object pretended to deliver. The illusion is powerful because the alternative has never been taught. You learned how to disappear. You were never taught how to remain. The hardest part is this. Everything you have been trying to reach through escape is something you could have been guided to access safely. Stillness, grounding, inner silence, emotional spaciousness, presence. None of these belong to addiction. They belong to consciousness. But no one trained you in them. No one showed you how to descend without self-destruction. So you found a counterfeit temple. A shortcut that promised transcendence and delivered repetition instead. Once this becomes visible, the illusion begins to crack, and another realization appears. If addiction was not your weakness, but your misguided attempt at spirituality and regulation, then the deeper issue has never been the habit itself. It has always been the hunger beneath it. The body always speaks before the mind is willing to listen. Long before thoughts collapse, the nervous system starts to protest, not with elaborate explanations, but with signals. Fatigue with no clear cause, restlessness that does not settle, tension that remains even during sleep. The body becomes the stage where everything unprocessed demands attention. You may believe addiction is a flaw in character, but the body knows better. It does not rebel to ruin you. It rebels to protect you. When emotional weight exceeds capacity, the nervous system initiates an emergency response. It pulls your awareness away from the fire, even if the door it chooses is not the one you would approve of. This is physical intelligence at work. The same intelligence that pulls your hand away from an open flame pulls your consciousness away from overload. When your inner world becomes hostile enough, the body will search for any exit. This is why willpower fails so often. Willpower speaks the language of the mind. Addiction lives inside the nervous system. And the nervous system does not respond to criticism. It responds to safety. It responds to regulation. It responds to environments where it is finally allowed to settle. When safety is missing, compulsion increases. The body does not long for destruction. It longs for regulation at any cost. When the only reliable form of regulation is a substance, a behavior, or a ritual, that becomes the body's medication. People relapse not when they suddenly become weak, but when they feel overwhelmed. It is not the urge that truly returns. It is the pressure. And pressure without release will eventually seek rupture. Here is a truth that can change how you see yourself. Your body is not addicted to chaos. It is addicted to relief. It learned that one pathway consistently led to a brief breath, even if that breath was followed by consequences. Until your nervous system is taught a new language of safety, it will keep returning to the only dialect it knows. The body is not fighting you. It is fighting for you. Once you understand this, the weapon you have been turning against yourself loses its power. Shame begins to dissolve. Punishment loses its appeal. A deeper question takes its place. If your body has been screaming for safety through escape, then what kind of safety has been missing all along? You were born with a compass that points inward. While others scan the world for instruction, you scan yourself. You feel what is off before anyone explains it. You sense danger before there is evidence. You pick up emotional truth without needing proof. This is not fantasy. This is intuition. When nurtured, it becomes guidance. When ignored, it becomes anxiety. The same sensitivity that could have become clarity was left untrained. Intuition did not vanish. It mutated. Instead of guiding, it alarmed. Instead of revealing, it overwhelmed. Without grounding and support, your insight did not soften you. It sharpened you. You became hyper-aware of what you could not fix, hyper-conscious of what you could not change. The more you noticed, the heavier life felt. Not because life is only suffering, but because you were carrying more of it than most. Eventually, intuition that once whispered began to shout. It stopped feeling like perception and started feeling like threat detection on overdrive. Your own emotional intelligence turned against you. You began to distrust your body. You questioned your instincts. You tried to silence what you once listened to. In that suppression, something painful occurred. Instead of trusting your inner signals, you numbed them. You confused intuition with intrusion. You experienced your own depth as danger. This is devastating for a sensitive person, because when intuition is muted, emptiness takes its place. And emptiness is unbearable for someone who was built to feel alive. So you searched for intensity elsewhere. Artificial intensity, manufactured emotion, anything that proved you still existed. The tragedy is not that you escaped your intuition. The tragedy is that you were taught to fear it. Addiction becomes a cruel solution to this internal war. It is the pause in the conflict. The moment when your inner alarms finally quiet down. For a while, you no longer have to listen to signals you were never taught to interpret. But a muted compass cannot guide you forward. It freezes you where you are. Each return to numbness erodes your trust in yourself a little more. You start to wonder if you are defective, if something essential in you is broken. But nothing is wrong with the instrument. It has only been misused. If intuition can be trained instead of drowned, if inner perception can be refined instead of silenced, then escape loses its purpose. What if your intuition was never the danger? What if it was always the door? You were not built for a loud world. You were built for a meaningful one. But you were placed inside a culture that prizes speed, distraction, and surface-level survival. A world that rewards emotional numbness and calls it strength. A world that praises ambition and punishes feeling. For a sensitive person, this environment is not neutral. It is abrasive. It wears on your nervous system every day. The more you bring softness, the more the world answers with pressure. The more you lead with depth, the more you are misunderstood. Slowly, almost invisibly, you begin to shrink. You learn which parts of you are not welcome. You track which emotions make others uncomfortable. You adjust your voice. You quiet your questions. You edit yourself down into something easier to consume. Over time, this self-erasure becomes exhausting. You are not only tired from living, you are tired from pretending, from holding yourself in shapes that do not fit your nature. The tragedy is not that the world fails to understand you. The deeper tragedy is that you begin to stop understanding yourself. A desensitized culture does not know what to do with emotional intelligence. It does not reward introspection. It does not create space for slowness. It does not know how to hold people who feel more than they perform. Instead, it offers armor. It tells you to toughen up instead of open up. It sells distraction as fulfillment. It markets numbness as normal. So you adapt. And adaptation looks like strength until it breaks you. When it does, you try to escape not only your pain but the environment that never felt safe enough for who you are. You seek refuge in substances, behaviors, and identities that promise distance from the noise. Addiction becomes less about chasing sensation and more about hiding from a culture that never learned how to hold you. You are not incompatible with life. You are incompatible with distortion. A distorted culture will always produce distorted solutions. Once you see this, something loosens. If your pain is not proof of personal failure but a sign of environmental misfit, then healing does not begin with punishment. It begins with relocation. Not of your body, but of your loyalty. Away from systems that demand your self-erasure towards spaces that allow your sensitivity to exist. And that brings us to empathy. You are not only feeling your own life, you are carrying fragments of other people's lives too. Their tension, their sadness, their unspoken despair. You absorbed it without any conscious agreement. Some call it sensitivity, some call it intuition. In truth, it is emotional permeability. When you are open by nature, boundaries do not appear automatically. You do not just understand others. For brief moments, you become them. Their moods seep into your system. Their pain settles in your body. Their chaos leaves marks on your nervous system. You listen without filters. You hold space without knowing how to leave it. You give without ever being shown how to retreat. No one taught you how to release what you take in, so it accumulates, not as memory, but as weight. The kind you cannot point to, but always feel. The kind that follows you into sleep and colors your dreams with emotions that did not begin inside you. This is emotional debt. Empathy without protection becomes exposure. Compassion without containment becomes collapse. You were never meant to be everyone's refuge. The world trains sensitive people to be healers without teaching them how to heal themselves. You become the listener, the steady one, the emotional sponge. Others leave lighter. You leave heavier. Eventually, the internal pressure demands an outlet, and escape returns. Not because you crave more pleasure, but because you crave separation. A pause from everyone else's inner noise. A return to something that feels private. Addiction appears to offer that separation. But it does not give you solitude. It gives suppression. It does not lift the weight. It teaches you how to sync with it more quietly. The more emotionally intelligent you are, the harder it is to recognize your own depletion. You mistake exhaustion for love. You call self-neglect generosity. You wear burnout like a badge, until your system can no longer carry it. Then shame arrives, and shame deepens the urge to disappear. But your exhaustion is not moral failure. It is unprotected sensitivity. Once you accept that, something essential shifts. If empathy is costing you your life, it is no longer love. It is self-erasure. And once you see that clearly, another layer reveals itself. Because when the self begins to dissolve under the weight of others, and under the pressure of your own unprocessed inner world, the mind looks for something solid. Anything that can stand in for the identity you can no longer feel. At first, escape was something you did. Then it became something you needed. Eventually, it began to feel like something you were. The behavior did not arrive announcing that it would replace you. It stayed long enough until you forgot who you were before it. When escape becomes routine, it stops feeling like escape. It starts feeling like home. You stop asking who you are without it. You cannot remember the last time you felt intact without that familiar doorway. Something dangerous happens when a coping mechanism becomes a companion. You begin to relate to it, not as an object, but as a secret relationship. The substance, the habit, the ritual becomes a private language between you and your suffering. It never judges. It seems to always be available. It asks nothing and quietly promises everything. In a way, it feels more reliable than many people in your life. People disappoint. Emotions overwhelm. Life moves at a pace that ignores your depth. But this one thing is always there, waiting. The frightening part is not that it works. It is that it works emotionally. It becomes the place you go when you have nowhere else to go inside yourself. At that point, stopping does not feel like losing a habit. It feels like losing a self. No one prepares you for the grief that comes from no longer knowing who you are, without your familiar escape routes. This is how the trap fully closes. You are not only attached to the behavior, you are attached to the version of yourself you can only access inside it, the quieter one, the softer one, the one who feels less hunted by the world. You do not love the habit. You love who you temporarily become within it. But that person is not an illusion. They are the part of you that has been buried, unprotected and unseen. Addiction did not create them. It only gave you a distorted doorway to visit them, which leads to a difficult truth. If the self you meet in escape feels more real than the one you show the world, then the problem is not that you vanish into addiction. The problem is that you never learned how to be yourself without it. Some doors should never be opened without an anchor. Yet sensitive people often step into depth without a rope around their waist. You felt more, saw more, questioned more. While others practiced fitting in, you fell inward. But depth is not the same as stability. You were expanding without integrating, opening without grounding, awakening mental and spiritual layers while the body was left behind. That imbalance creates distortion. Spiritual sensitivity without grounding is like electricity without insulation. It illuminates but burns. You may feel drawn to meaning, truth, and transcendence, but your body was never taught how to conduct that much voltage. So you oscillate between awareness and escape, between hunger for meaning and longing for numbness, between opening your mind and abandoning your body. From the outside, you do not look unstable. You look thoughtful, insightful, spiritually inclined. On the inside, there is no solid floor. Addiction steps in where grounding should have been. It offers weight when you float too high. It slows experience when thought becomes too loud. It drags awareness back into the body by sedating it. This is not spiritual failure, it is spiritual disorientation. Without ritual, embodiment, and emotional integration, awareness becomes unbearable. The body demands something to bring it down from the altitude of constant perception. The irony is sharp. You reached upward in search of meaning, and you escaped downward in search of relief. No one told you that awakening without embodiment is not awakening. It is fragmentation. This is why so many spiritually sensitive people suffer quietly. They explore inner skies while their roots weaken. Eventually, even the sky becomes too heavy to hold. Something will ground them, even if it harms them in the process. But there is another way. A way no one showed you. A way of descending into yourself without breaking. A way to carry depth without collapsing beneath it. This path is not about leaving the body. It is about returning to it. You were never meant to drown in your feelings. They were meant to be transformed. But no one taught you how to turn emotion into understanding, pain into signal, memory into wisdom. So emotion stayed raw inside you, unrefined, undigested, dangerous. Emotional alchemy is not fantasy. It is skill. The capacity to hold intensity without becoming it, to feel without collapsing, to process instead of suppress. This kind of alchemy turns suffering into comprehension instead of compulsion. Most people are trained to flee what hurts. You were built to metabolize it. But metabolism requires method. Without it, emotion becomes toxic. You tried to dissolve it through distraction. You tried to drown it in pleasure. You tried to outrun it with numbness. But emotion does not vanish. It embeds itself in the nervous system when ignored. Then it leaks out as anxiety with no story, anger with no clear target, addiction with no obvious origin. Alchemy would have freed you long ago, not from pain, but from being defined by pain. The moment you stop becoming your feelings, they stop owning you. You become the interpreter rather than the prisoner. Interpretation changes everything. You begin to hear information where there was noise, meaning where there was chaos, direction where there was dread. Emotions begin to act as messengers instead of rulers, and messengers leave once their message is received. Addiction steals this process. It replaces listening with sedation. It locks the raw material of transformation inside the body. The return of alchemy makes escape irrelevant, not because you restrain yourself harder, but because the substance no longer performs any useful function. This brings us back to sensitivity. Sensitivity is not something you erase. It is something you educate. You were never shown that option. So you did what anyone does when they do not know how to handle power. You tried to shut it down. You were told to toughen up, to endure, to ignore your reactions instead of understanding them. Every time you forced yourself into numbness, you mistook survival for maturity. But sensitivity does not disappear when ignored. It mutates. It becomes anxiety. It becomes detachment. It becomes addiction. Training sensitivity means learning how to regulate intensity without destroying perception. It means recognizing that your nervous system is not your enemy, but a system that speaks in signals, sensations, and impulses. When you begin to listen instead of override, sensitivity stops screaming. It starts guiding. You no longer drown in emotional waves. You learn to ride them. Riding requires practice, not avoidance. It requires presence, not perfection. Training sensitivity means strengthening your capacity to stay, to remain inside your body while discomfort moves through. Feelings are not permanent states. They are movements. They arrive, build, and release when allowed. When you interrupt this cycle with numbness, the movement freezes. Frozen emotion becomes pressure. When you train yourself to stay, the cycle completes. Sensation transforms, not into suffering, but into information. That is the difference between drowning and swimming. One is panic, the other is relationship. The more your nervous system learns safety, the less it seeks sedation. The stronger your inner stability grows, the weaker escape becomes. Recovery stops being a fight against habit and becomes the natural consequence of becoming inhabitable to yourself again. You tried to leave your body long before you knew what that meant. Every form of escape is a quiet departure from yourself. Some people leave through distraction, others through substances, others through compulsive work, fantasy, or emotional withdrawal. The destination is the same, anywhere but here. Your body became a place you did not want to stay in, Not because it was wrong, but because it held too much. Memory, sensation, truth, everything you did not yet know how to carry. So you learned how to disappear without physically going anywhere. Present in appearance, absent in experience. Healing does not happen in the places you run to. It begins in the place you left. Embodiment is not an aesthetic practice. It is the radical act of staying in contact with sensation, even when sensation is uncomfortable. It is learning how to remain while your heart races, how to breathe while fear rises, how to be here without bargaining with the moment. The body is not asking you to fix it. It is asking you to inhabit it. This is the distinction between spirit and dissociation. One brings you deeper into life, the other pulls you away. Sensitive people often confuse dissociation with transcendence because both can feel like lightness. Only one allows you to return fully alive. At first, embodiment feels heavy, like gravity returning, like friction re-entering your daily life. But over time, something else emerges. You realize you are no longer being dragged by each moment. You are being held by it. As presence grows, escape begins to fall apart. It has nothing firm to grip. You no longer need to leave what finally feels inhabitable. Then something unexpected happens. You start to feel safer inside yourself than anywhere else. This is when addiction loses its pull, not because you fought harder, but because you outgrew it. At that point, a new question opens. What if suffering was never punishment, but preparation? What if every fracture in your story was not pointless damage, but pressure carving you into who you are becoming? Pain does not arrive empty-handed. It brings information. It reveals structure that comfort never touches. It exposes what cannot survive exposure. You were not crushed by your experiences. You were shaped by them. Sensitive people do not suffer because they are weak. They suffer because they are deep. And depth carries weight. The same intensity that made life unbearable when untrained now becomes the source of meaning when integrated. Your empathy was never meant to drain you. It was meant to mature you. Your intuition was never meant to torment you. It was meant to guide you. Your emotional depth was never meant to drown you. It was meant to root you. And your addiction, it was never your shame. It was your signal. It showed where sensitivity had lost support, where the system lacked structure, where awareness and embodiment were split apart. You can see it now, not as a defect, but as untrained design. This does not mean your suffering was beautiful. It means it had direction. It means it was pointing at the exact place where your power needed understanding. Power without understanding feels like punishment. Once it is understood, it becomes service. You spent years believing something was fundamentally wrong with you, that your emotions were too much, your instincts too sharp, your needs too inconvenient. You learned to see yourself as the problem without ever questioning the tools you were given. No one taught you how to stand inside intensity without collapsing. You were taught only how to endure it, ignore it, or dilute it. So you adapted the only way you knew. You escaped. Not because you were weak, but because you were overwhelmed. An overwhelmed nervous system does not make moral decisions. It makes survival decisions. Addiction was never your enemy. It was the emergency lever your body pulled in the absence of options. Now something different is possible. Awareness has entered your story. Understanding has interrupted the pattern. The moment interpretation replaces confusion, the cycle begins to lose its authority. Nothing essential in you was wrong. Everything essential in you was undeveloped. Your sensitivity was never a curse. It was an instruction manual that no one helped you read. This is not only a story about recovery, it is a story about reunion. Reunion with your body, with your intuition, with your emotional intelligence, with the self you abandoned in order to survive. You are not required to become someone else. You are invited to return to who you were before you learned to disappear. When you do, something quietly extraordinary happens. The pain that once drove you away becomes the ground that holds you in place. And the life you tried so hard to escape begins to feel like a place you can finally live inside.